Hey yo, you like Shadow? Because I like Shadow. I like Shadow so much that I've done this stupid idea where I play a randomly selected Shadow the Hedgehog story path like 3 times now, and I get physical withdrawal symptoms when I haven't done a playthrough in a while. No, you have a problem. I can quit anytime I want. So, quick overview for those who are new to this. Shadow the Hedgehog has 326 named and numbered story paths that you can play through. What we're doing here is basically having a picker wheel choose my story path by picking a number between 1 and 326, excluding the numbers of the previous playthroughs that we've already covered. We'll play through the story that RNG selects for us, and then I'll sort of analyze and review the story in terms of how much or how little sense it makes. Everybody on the same page? Nice. Let's head over to the wheel and grok to a spin on that. I've just burned through every redeeming quality I have as a human being in one sentence, didn't I? So path number 267 is titled Ego Dyed in Black, and this is the level path that we'll need to take. I usually like to give some prediction on what I think the story will be based on the title alone, but I've honestly got nothing on this one. It's kind of a generic title that could pretty much go anywhere, which is kind of concerning to be perfectly honest. But enough yapping, let's see what this story has for us. The game starts off the same way every time, so I won't yap too long here, but for those who don't know, Shadow has amnesia, the plot causes the Black Arm's alien army to start attacking the city in front of him, and the alien's leader, Black Doom, appears to Shadow and implicitly tells him that he knows who he is and that Shadow should gather up the Chaos Emeralds if he wants answers about his past. With this information in mind, Shadow shoots off into the city, bringing us into our first level, Westopolis. This is where we take control of Shadow and can pick which mission we're going to do. For the first time in the series, we're actually going to be joining up with Sonic, who stops us pretty much immediately when we hit the ground, asking for help taking out all of the aliens in the city. This is a relatively easy task for most people that I somehow screwed up, requiring 2 full backtracks through the level to find 2 little demon birds that somehow eluded me on the first go. And that pretty much sets the stage for how the rest of this is going to go, to be perfectly honest. We grab 1 Chaos Emerald during the mission itself and a second for completing the mission and move on to Cutscene Land, where we're treated to our customary exposition of the Gun Commander. Now for anybody who doesn't know, Gun is basically like the good guy army, think like United Earth Defense Force kind of deal. The commander of said army, this dude, doesn't like Shadow. Why? Well, it's not really relevant to this story, so I'm just gonna move on. We then meet back up with Sonic and Shadow, who are ogling Shadow's newfound jewels, but Black Doom crashes their little yaoi session to inform Shadow that the Black Arms have secured a 3rd Chaos Emerald somewhere else in the city, which is kind of weird, considering Shadow just worked openly against Doom, so why is Doom telling Shadow that there's another emerald nearby? Whatever, we're not going to question things too much yet. Either way, this information sends Sonic and Shadow out to Lethal Highway, a new level for us in this series. In this level, you only have a hero and a dark mission to pick from, the hero mission being to destroy the Black Arms, whatever the hell this thing is. The game calls it a tank, but like, look at this thing. It's 100% not a tank. It looks fleshy and appears to have a tail. Is this a living thing? Anyway, the hero mission would make sense story-wise in my opinion, but Shadow decides to join up with Doom for some reason, meaning we'll be doing the dark mission for this level, which is to
withdraw from the city.
I think you and I both know he used that wording to avoid actually saying the line, so to compensate for that,
follow me, set me free, trust me and we will escape from the city.
So Shadow follows Doom's commands, which basically just turns out to be a get to the end of the level type of mission, so it is kind of anticlimactic, but the level itself is really fun. It has a lot of long stretches where you can either build speed on foot or use the motorcycles that are scattered throughout the level, which I suck at using, but I would be lying if I said they weren't really fun to use. I also just want to quickly point out the background art for this medal. There's like the alien spears piercing through the buildings and stuff. It's so cool, dude. Like the aesthetic is wild. Completing the mission in Lethal Highway brings us to Sonic and Shadow pursuing Black Doom as he attempts to leave the city. Sonic, I guess, gave up on the whole tank thing at some point. Listen, just don't ask questions, please. Shadow clarifies his position that he's not going to take orders from Doom, but he's not necessarily out to fight Doom either. He's just looking for the Chaos Emeralds to be able to put together his past. Black Doom, I guess, doesn't like that Shadow isn't being a good, obedient little boy and summons this thing to, I guess, beat Shadow up and assert dominance or something. Also, can we just point out really quickly how this thing sounds nothing like it looks? Welcome to our first boss fight with Black Bull. To be honest, I did not remember at all what I was supposed to do to take this thing down at first, so I used Zelda logic and homing attacked his eye, and that was apparently the right choice. This fight starts pretty slow because all you can do at the beginning is homing attack Black Bull's eye, but at around halfway down his health, some foot soldiers start spawning in, so you can steal their guns to shoot at his eye instead of having to spam homing attacks. Overall, it's a pretty easy fight, but I do feel bad about the way he just kind of flops after you beat him. After getting the Chaos Emerald off of Black Bull, which I don't really want to question where he was hiding it, but now that image is in my head, so it has to be in yours too, we're treated to the other customary cutscene with the president being briefed about the Black Arms invasion. I could think of nothing funny to say about this cutscene this time, and it isn't relevant to the larger plot this time anyway, so... At this point, Shadow has left Westopolis, although we're not really given an explicit story reason for why he does this. Presumably he's just come to Prison Island because he knows there's a Chaos Emerald here and he's trying to hunt it down. Seeing this location though gives him flashbacks of when he was released from stasis by Eggman during the events of Sonic Adventure 2, but he only thinks about that for about 5 seconds before continuing on his way into the Prison Island level itself. Here we have the option to just track down the Emerald for the neutral mission, destroy gun robots for the dark mission, or help Charmy collect his top secret discs, whatever those are, for the hero mission. Probably not a good idea to ask Charmy what's on those discs, by the way. He's probably on several government watch lists. But anyway, our story today dictates that we must endure the crackhead bee, so Shadow's gonna go collect physical media. This mission is actually surprisingly easy. The discs glow so you can see where they are from a distance, and Charmy will direct you which way to go when there are branching paths, so there's really not a lot of room for error. After you collect all 5 of Charmy's missing PSP games, Shadow grabs the Chaos Emerald and heads out. And dude, look at this, a cutscene that actually makes the transition to the next level make sense. Shadow, I guess, either stuck around with Charmy or just followed him after helping gather up his discs. This leads Shadow back to the rest of Team Chaotix, who are trying to hack into a computer that's conspicuously housed in its own chamber. If only there were a convenient way to refer to a room that contains a computer. Anyway, it turns out this is one of Eggman's computers, and Vector asks for Shadow to help them try to hack in since Shadow has a connection to Eggman, which is fitting considering Shadow just recalled Eggman releasing him from stasis. Shadow obliges Vector's request by using one of my preferred computer repair techniques. This somehow works, activating the teleporter, which Shadow jumps into with no hesitation. Dude just full sends it right into that thing. I guess between Vector's comments and his flashback on Prison Island, Shadow figures that Eggman's database might have some information about his past. Anyway, this brings us to our next level, Mad Matrix. So let me level with you. I totally forgot about this level's existence. I came into this level and I saw a computer type thing, so I was expecting something like Digital Circuit, and it does start out kind of similar to Digital Circuit, and I was kind of excited because I like the colorful aesthetic and that level is kind of cool, but at about the halfway point, something awful happens to this level that puts it on par in my mind with the Doom. But we'll get to that in a second. Let me explain our mission first. Basically, we have the option to just get to the end of the level, help SPO activate 4 terminals, whatever that means, I honestly forget, or help Doom set off 30 bombs to destroy Eggman's mainframe. This time the story demands that we'll be carrying out alien-sponsored terrorism and helping Doom destroy the mainframe, which I guess sort of makes sense if Shadow's goal here is to draw Eggman out so he can get some answers. So you're probably thinking, what is so bad about this level that you alluded to before? Well, it has to do with the bomb part of the mission. All of these bombs are located in this area, which means you can only access them by riding along the lightspeed circuits in this central area, and I did have to look up what the lightspeed circuits were called, by the way. Now, setting the bombs off is easy enough. All you do is ram Shadow into them. I could have probably worded that a little better, but anyway. The issue is that once you enter the lightspeed circuits, the camera locks itself so that you can't move it. So you're basically navigating this whole area blind. If the camera blesses you with a good angle, you can sort of plan your route in a limited way as you're moving, but otherwise you're rotating between trying to find a place to get off the lightspeed circuit, surveying your surroundings to find the nearest bomb, going back into the lightspeed circuit, getting lost, and then repeating this process until you IRL die of natural causes. And you want to know the worst part of all of this? This game's render distance is kind of garbage, so unless you just happen to be near that one bomb you're missing, chances are you're not even going to be able to see it if you're trying to survey the area from a distance. I wasn't recording my reactions at the time because I was recording this gameplay footage at like midnight, but I was crashing the fuck out, dude. Anyway, 21 minutes later, I found the last bomb and ended this nightmare-ass level. For reference, the Doom took me 19 minutes and 15 seconds in the last playthrough, so this was somehow objectively worse than that. So anyway, my theory about Shadow wanting to draw Eggman out ends up holding some water because Eggman intercepts Shadow and SPO as they're making their way out. Shadow uses the opportunity to try to get some answers about his past, but as per usual in these stories, Eggman chooses to be a shitter and tell Shadow that he doesn't actually have a past. Now this always bothered me even as a kid because up to this point you have literally no reason to assume that this Shadow is literally a brand new Shadow. At the very worst, he would be an android, but in that case he would still be the same android from Sonic Heroes, at least that's the way I understand the continuity, but this becomes more relevant later. Espio tells Shadow to stay focused and basically tries to imply that Eggman is full of shit, leading us into our first fight with the Eggbreaker. We did see this fight twice in our last playthrough, but this one is a little bit different. Eggman's weakness stays the same, you basically just want to aim for the head of the mech, but this time there's a whole upper area above you where some egg pawns spawn in, so you can get access to weapons right away. Eggman also has access to one of his more infamous attacks in this version of the fight, where he'll spawn a bunch of orbs that radiate away from him in a circle. This attack actually ends up being kind of useful because you can sort of lock him into not moving around and only doing that attack if you stand at the right distance from him. So you can end the fight pretty fast by firing at him between the orb spawning if you don't mind hearing him say this.
You know what they say, the more the merrier.
Over and over again. Anyway, Eggman goes down pretty easily despite giving us a little extra aneurysm on top of the one I already had from the level itself, so let's just get the hell out of here before I start saying gamer words. So Shadow warps close to Eggman's jungle base, which does track now that we've established a reason to pursue Eggman in this story, but Shadow just happens to warp in face to face with one of Eggman's Shadow androids. Understandably, he freaks out a little bit about this newfound source of existential dread as the doctor passes overhead saying he's heading back to his base. Shadow briefly questions if he could be one of these androids and then takes off after Eggman, presumably for more answers. This brings us to the Iron Jungle level. Now we've seen this place a couple of times before, so I'll be relatively quick here. Our three mission options are getting through the jungle to Eggman's base for the neutral mission, helping Omega take down Eggman's blimp for the hero mission, or helping Eggman secure the base by taking out the gun robots in the area for the dark mission. Now, double-edged sword time. We do not have to take out the blimp again, thank Christ. If you want to see me fail at that spectacularly, you can check out the last playthrough. However, our mission as dictated by the story this time is to help Eggman, which is easier, but to me it doesn't really track with the rest of the story so far, especially given that Shadow shouldn't be the biggest fan of Eggman right now. I guess we can sort of justify it if we consider that Shadow might just be trying to placate Eggman to get answers, but I still think that's a bit of a stretch. Anyway, despite our mission being very straightforward, I still somehow die multiple times, one of which being this glorious representation of what I want to do IRL sometimes. But besides being an idiot, this mission really is not too bad. Most of the enemies are just along the path you're going to go through anyway, so barring throwing yourself off of cliffs, it's really pretty easy. Finding his way into the base, Shadow comes face to face with Eggman again. Now, this scene does make a little more sense having helped Eggman to get here. Omega seems like he's ready to attack Eggman right away, but Shadow stops him in favor of trying to get answers, which makes more sense after having gone along with Eggman's demands, even if doing so doesn't really make sense in the larger story. In any case, Eggman doubles down on his previous claim that Shadow has no past by telling Shadow that he is in fact one of the mass-produced androids, and he gets a little pissed off that his creations would dare to confront him. This leads us into our second Eggbreaker fight, and I'm just realizing this is another 3 mini-boss story path. That's nuts. Same deal as last time, just headshot Eggman and this fight will go by pretty quickly. You can either steal the Egg Pawn's weapons or use the turrets on the outside of the arena. Admittedly, the turrets are a little less reliable because the Eggbreaker can destroy them, but they are satisfying to get the kill with, which I was able to do this time. Okay, you ready to go full sprint to the end of this game? Because for some reason this cutscene wants to just full sprint to the end of the game. There's barely a transition here. All that happens is Shadow gets a Chaos Emerald from Eggman and proves he's the ultimate life form by showing how to do basic algebra.
This makes 5 Chaos Emeralds. Okay, 2 more and then the truth about my past will be revealed.
He then gets an urgent page from Black Doom, who tells him that Gun has invaded the Black Arm's base, the Black Comet. Doom tells Shadow to get to the Comet ASAP, leading to our final level, the Black Comet, which I guess is appropriately named, but it's not winning any originality points. Our mission choices are pretty simple this time. We either help Knuckles find his way deeper into the Comet, i.e. find the end of the level, or help Doom take out all of the gun forces in the Comet. Finding the end of the level would just be too easy, so the story has dictated today that we are doing a Gunocide run. Now, we haven't seen a Black Comet level yet in our playthroughs, but my thoughts on them are that they're just kind of okay. They mix some platforming and some mandatory vehicle sections, so you do get some variety. Actually, literally while I'm recording the commentary for this, I'm realizing that the level itself is kind of similar to Prison Island in those ways, which is extra weird because I'm pretty sure the music in this level is just a remixed version of the Prison Island music. There is one issue I have with this level though, and that's that I feel like it kind of edges you with building speed. Bear with me for a second, I'll explain what I mean. There are portions of the level that seem like they would be good to just plow right through, like full sprint, but you're usually prevented from doing that by enemies or set pieces blocking you from being able to full send through those sections. So it's like it wants you to go fast, but it doesn't want you to go fast. But anyway, focusing back on the mission, in a word, it's just easy. It's time consuming, yeah, but all of the enemies are pretty much along your set route through the level, and I don't think there are even any branching paths to throw you off. The only notable issue I had was that one of the Black Arms Special Forces dudes broke my flying saucer and sent me into the goop at one point. Speaking of the goop, do you guys think this is Black Doom's... Anyway, so Shadow takes out all the gun forces on the Comet, grabs his 6th Chaos Emerald, and ends up face to face with Sonic and his big robot friend. Sonic sort of laments Shadow's decision making, and the big robot, which turns out to be piloted by the gun commander, blurts out that Shadow was responsible for destroying the Ark and everyone aboard. Do you like how that whole plot point is just shoved in here randomly? Cause I sure do. Shadow responds basically by saying that the humans should pay with their lives for what they've done, and that he'll kill Sonic if he tries to intervene. What the fuck is that? Did I miss something? No, I didn't miss anything, that's just the way this story is. So this brings us to our final boss fight with Sonic and Diablon, the big robot thing. This is another new boss fight for us, and another that I completely forgot how to handle while I was doing it. But you're essentially fighting two enemies here. You have Sonic, who doesn't have a health bar and can only attack you with homing attacks, and Diablon, whose health bar is the one that's shown. But Diablon has a shield up that blocks its conspicuously large eye, so what do? Well, what I found is you somehow need to get yourself airborne to get rid of the shield. The easiest way I found to do that is to attack Sonic head-on with a homing attack, because he'll counter you and send you both flying upward. At that point, Diablon tries to shoot a laser off, but he drops his shield when he does that, so he also opens himself up to attack. Basically, anytime Diablon attacks, his shield goes down, so I'm sure there's a more consistent way to do this, but this is what I did. You can hit Diablon's weak point with either your homing attack or by firing on him with a weapon that you can pick up from the crates on the outer part of the arena. After a few hits, Diablon lands, but the rest of the fight is pretty much the same. You're just baiting him into attacking, smacking him around a bit, dodging his and Sonic's attacks when needed, rinse, repeat, and you end up with a dead robot pretty quickly. So now Shadow has collected all of the Chaos Emeralds and defeated both Sonic and Diablon. Sonic asks why Shadow is sided with the Black Arms, to which Shadow proclaims his loyalty to Black Doom and his intent to help the Black Arms establish their dark empire on Earth. Because, you know, that was clear from his actions up to this point. Shadow tops all of this off with an evil laugh and leaves me to try and figure out what the hell just happened. I'm gonna do my best here, okay? Objectively, I can pretty easily say that this story is one of the ones that really isn't too well put together, because Shadow's decisions are all over the place and weird and nothing seems to really connect to each other, but I'm gonna try and weave something together here. Because of the name of this story path, I feel like things could have started really interestingly, with Shadow sort of starting off as cocky, adopting a little bit of Sonic's personality after working with him in Westopolis. But he gets smacked with a reality check when Doom ends up with a Chaos Emerald in Lethal Highway. Shadow scrambles to try and take that emerald back, which he is ultimately successful in doing, but he realizes he might not be as capable as Sonic made him think he was. So Shadow distances himself from the whole Westopolis situation and ends up at Prison Island, where he begins to focus more on piecing his past together rather than containing the Black Arms. Helping Charmy brings Shadow back to the rest of Team Chaotix, who in passing link Eggman to Shadow's past. Now at this point, Shadow has no good reason not to help Espio, but what happened in Westopolis could actually play into his decision making here. Shadow knows what happened the last time he tried to balance helping a friend and searching for answers at the same time, i.e. he was just barely able to intercept the third Chaos Emerald from Black Doom and Black Bull when he thought he had everything under control. So Shadow chooses to go along with Doom in Mad Matrix, but not necessarily because he wants to align with the Black Arms. Shadow knows that damaging the mainframe will draw Eggman out, which to his credit does end up working. He only cares about getting his answers, and at this point he doesn't care that he has to align with the bad guys to get them, especially in a situation where the only real casualty is Eggman's computer. Having drawn Eggman out, Shadow directly asks what he knows, but Eggman tells Shadow he has no past, and I really feel like this is the point in the story where things could have gotten really cool with the idea that Shadow doesn't have a past. I know canonically that isn't right, but a story with a blank slate Shadow would have been really, really cool. But that's not what happened here. Maybe in another path that does happen, making a more cohesive story, but unfortunately we don't have that luxury today. Instead, we're given even more story elements to contend with when Shadow tracks Eggman back to Iron Jungle, where he's smacked with the possibility that he could just be one of Eggman's Shadow androids. In fact, the last thing Shadow hears about his past in this story is just Eggman telling him that he is in fact an android, which makes this ending even more disjointed. Now, as much as I tried to smooth over the lead up, I really don't know how to smooth out the ending. Shadow immediately heeding Doom's call to go to the Black Comet is jarring enough, but then aligning with Doom, turning on Sonic outright, and then pledging to take over the world are just so far out of left field here. I could see an ending with Eggman sort of making sense in this case, with Shadow being like completely stripped of any past that he thought he had. He lashes out, teams up with Eggman, and they sort of at the last minute take out the Black Arms and become the bigger threat. That would at least kind of make sense, but that's not what we got here. The only way I can kind of make this ending make sense is if we assume that Shadow's generally good personality shown near the beginning of the story was completely destroyed by 1, not being as capable as he thought he was, and 2, the revelation that he's an android. But these don't really explain why he would align with the Black Arms in light of those 2 factors, especially not when he still refers to himself as the ultimate life form, and he seems more concerned about Black Doom ruling the new empire than his own vengeance or redemption even. So I don't know, as I was playing through this, it seemed like the whole thing was going to be another setup for Shadow like lashing out in an existential panic again, or at the very least having that plot point be in some way relevant to the ending, sort of like in Shadow Surpassing Shadow actually. But it all just kind of takes off in another direction almost literally at the last minute. The end really did not fit with the lead up at all here. I mean, I hate to oversimplify things, but this story literally comes down to this.
Join me, Shadow. Together we will usher in a dark empire on Earth.
No, I'm gonna find my own answers my own way.
Oh, okay. What if I ask you in like 2 hours or something?
You son of a bitch, I'm in. But as I've said before, not all of these stories are going to be fully cohesive. Considering how many story paths there are, we can't expect literally all 326 of them to be intricately woven together to guarantee that they make sense. The game is still fun, and there are plenty of paths that do tell self-contained, rounded off stories. In fact, we've already seen a couple of those. But I do still think it's fun to try and analyze something that really doesn't make sense and at least try to get it to make sense, even if I can't really do that, like in this case. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy these videos, leave a like if you feel like it. I really feel icky even saying that, but it does really help to get the video out to more people. There will absolutely be more of these in the future because I find them ridiculously fun to put together, so keep an eye out. Thank you guys again for watching, and I will see you in whatever I decide to do next. See ya!